I'm a teacher in Minnesota. I'm doing this very low tech. I'm just wanting to point out a few things that I see. Consequently, do something like an apologia for Christianity.
So, again, put it another way. There's the reality that Plato saw. There's the mathematical language that he used, the mathematical mythology that he used to talk about that language. There are all the other stories that Plato constructed based upon that mathematical image as a way of talking about that reality. It's a very interesting way of looking at it, I think. And it does go back to that idea that you have, initially, unity. Things are one, you're unified. Out of that unity, there's a duality that comes. That duality then goes into a multiplicity. And the multiplicity is where we get the 3, right? In other words, you start with 1, you go to 2, you move to 3. Well, if you're paying attention, that really does look very familiar. It's the story, which can be interpreted 2 ways, and those 2 ways are a third set of interpretations hanging on it, right? It's the literal, the allegorical, the anagogical, and more. And Plato is suggesting, way back in time, before Thomas Aquinas and the Porta's interpretation, he's suggesting this is a reality of how the world is constructed. The world is constructed this way. What we see around us, this multiplicity of stuff, this tremendous multiplicity of stuff, comes originally from a dyad and a monad. Everything is one. All the created world is one thing. And the author here Olson suggests that, he says, in the end I suspect this was the great Pythagorean secret that Plato could not openly reveal, but only hint at, expecting his attentive followers to abduct the solution. We begin to see why Plato was so careful not to reveal the real nature of the golden section and its reciprocal, respectively, the greater and the lesser. This same hesitancy to reveal things makes a great deal of sense. If one has seen something about the reality of the world, you can say it openly. And then people think you're a nutcase. You're an insane prophet speaking from the hills. Or you're a heretic. Or you're a rabble rouser. And what do they normally do with heretics, rabble rousers, and nutcases? The majority of people, Plato suggests, the majority of people don't want to hear them. And so they lock them up. Or they burn them. Or they give them hemlock, as they did to Socrates, Plato's main character. Or, if not that, they shun them. They don't want to be around. These freaks are not people we want to be around. And what do the freaks do in return? Well, I think back to my high school experience. What did freaks do in high school? They wore black. They separated themselves from society. They felt more and more worthless. And they were driven by the society to be completely on the periphery. They were the catcher in the rye. They were the people on the edges of society. And either those people on the edges of society survived, or else they didn't. And when they didn't, they went, fringe, somewhere else. They began to be the violent type. If they survived because they began to think about mythology and they were told by somebody at some point that this mythology means something. Somebody came down into their little cave and drew them back out into the light. And those people then became the artists and the musicians and the actors and the writers that we have today. That's what we have when we talk about artists. Artists are people who feel on the outskirts of society. And they try to, the good ones, by the way, I'm not talking about people that, spread feces over a picture, call that art. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about people that actually employ the images at their disposal to best effect. Those people, trained well, are the ones that have seen something that puts them apart from society. They have seen some vision that puts them apart from society. And as they grow, if they're trained right, and if they're brought along in the right direction, they become the initiates, the adepts and the masters. But that's a very difficult thing in society to do, because the majority of society, although they love art and they want to engage in art, they don't want to hear what the artist actually has to say, because it's too disturbing. So I take something from this article to back that up. This is New Platonism and Alchemy by Alexander Wilder. It was first published in 1869, so it's an older article, but he makes some very good points. One of the things that he points out here is that Plato, like many other adepts and masters, was very hesitant to publish anything that he thought or saw or examined, mainly because of simple physical violence that might have been done to him. Wilder writes, the agents sought for in alchemy and praised by all true alchemists were three. Namely, first, the philosopher's stone, by which metals were transformed. Second, the Alcahest, or universal solvent. Third, the Elixir Vitae, by which human life was capable of being prolonged indefinitely. So three things: the philosopher's stone, the Alcahest, and the Elixir Vitae. And by the way, if you notice real quickly, again, literal, the allegorical, the anagogical, the moral. The possibility, Wilder says, the possibility of reducing the elements to their primal form as they are supposed to have existed in igneous mass, that is the mass of lead or stone, from which it is believed that they were transformed, is not considered by physicists to be so absurd an idea as has been intimated. There is a relationship between metals often so close as to indicate an original identity. Persons called alchemists may therefore have devoted their energies to investigations into these matters, as Lavoisier and Faraday and others of our day have explained the mysteries of chemistry. But alchemy, Wilder says, was a different affair. Its professors and adepts only employed the peculiar dialect or jargon as a species of figurative language to cover an esoteric meaning of a far different character. The philosopher's stone, the Alcahest, and the elixir were names of one and the same thing, and were supposed to accomplish an identical operation. Baptista Porta, in his treatise on natural magic, declares as much. He says, I do not promise any golden mountains, nor yet that philosopher's stone which the world hath so great an opinion of, which hath been bragged of in so many ages and happily attained unto by some. Neither yet do I promise here that golden liquor, whereof, if any, desires. For since the world is mutable and subject to alterations, therefore, whatsoever the world produceth is subject to destruction. So in other words, if, for instance, what we're talking about here is an immutable thing, if we're trying to produce something that will not die, it wouldn't be gold. It wouldn't be the transfer of lead to gold, which is what most people consider alchemy to be. Why? Because gold decays. You look at the book of Ecclesiastes, it says exactly this. All gold will fade, right? Vanity upon vanities, all things are vanity, says the author of Ecclesiastes. The alchemists didn't believe that they were actually translating gold, lead, literally, into gold. It's not what they thought. So, such was the real belief of all genuine alchemists, says Wilder. The reason for the employment of a peculiar mystic form of speech was the great peril which was incurred for religious dissent. Learned men, generally, who were imprudent in the expression of their convictions were punished during the Middle Ages, as in the case of Galileo, Copernicus, and numerous others. They were all classed by the ignorant among dealers in the black art, having intercourse with spirits and demons, that's what they said, and were, as occasion served, burned at the stake, or broken on the wheel, or disjointed on the rack, for disregarding the current belief and endeavoring to instruct the common people. Like I'm doing.
Angel.